feel free to just fire away. I think we had a nice combo the last time.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm also
Here
gonna.
we go. Here we go. Here we go. It looks like we're live
Looks like.
in 5, 4, 3. Do you see anything?
I see it says meeting is now streaming.
2. Yes. It says it there. I don't see it on the 2, 4. Okay. Yes, we are live. Hello, everybody, and it's great to see you again. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is Relationship Empowerment Month, and we have again with us Jaro. He is an exceptional psychotherapist, and he's going to be talking to us today about relationships. You don't want to miss this, so share, tell all your friends about it. Those that are going through some tough times in their relationships, give them a buzz right now. Let them know that we have a great program ahead for you. Now, other thing is that we are offering, Phoenix National Business Group is offering $50 to any of the first 5 people that retain the services of anyone that is within our network or anyone that you see on the program. So if you give Joel a call or Oscar a call and retain their services, you have the potential of getting $50 from Phoenix National Business Group as a gift of appreciation for using those who are within our network. And also, you can get $100 just for watching the program. Yep. This offer is to 5 people that would be in a drawing. You just have to register at phoenixnationalbusinessgroup.com and watch the program within our theater. Leave your comments. Let us know that you're watching. And in a drawing, we will pick your name out so you can get an appreciation gift for watching of up to $100. So again, this is an opportunity for you. We know that you're going to enjoy this program because it's going to be very informative. I'm going to turn it now over to my good friend, Oscar Coppola, and he's going to introduce our guest for today.
Good morning or afternoon. I don't know when you're watching this, but we'll introduce Joel Jaro, who I went to grade school with way back when dinosaurs were roaming the countryside. Reconnected through Facebook and found out that he's a very successful psychotherapist. And I'd like to know, Joel, did I help at any point drive you into that I need to fix people's heads type of job?
Yes, she did. And I'm eternally grateful to you for that. By the way. I don't think I've ever expressed that to you, but this is a perfect opportunity for that. So thank you.
All right. So without further ado, Joel, take
Good
over
man.
and let us know how you can help us with relationships.
Sure. I mean, just to give a little backdrop, maybe for people who didn't see the last broadcast, by the way, which thank you guys for having me back again. Just a very brief backdrop that I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I have a master's in counseling, postgraduate training at NYU. Got my master's at Yeshiva, and I've been in the field for a number of years, long time. As I said previously, I've done it in 2 languages in 2 countries. I lived in Israel for about 5 years, so I did therapy there, a lot of post-traumatic work in Israel, and also recovery work. And here my specialty areas are, couples therapy is one of my main areas of focus, but I also work what we call emerging adults, which are classically called, known as failure to launch kids that are sort of growing up a little too slowly, staying at home too long. We all know the dynamic, for whatever reason. Now, some of it is circumstantial, but some of it I think is developmental and the way kids are being raised. So they're growing up a little slowly, and they come to my office generally referred by their parents. So I do a lot of work with them. I work with adults in general with general issues, depression, anxiety, I also do what's called psychological clearances for bariatric weight loss surgery. I have a very exclusive relationship with a surgeon. I actually want to give him a shout out. I didn't the last time. His name is Jonathan Arad. He's based in Ardsley, New York. Phenomenal surgeon, and we have an exclusive relationship where I do psychological clearances before people go for weight loss surgery, because it's a requirement to do that. There are a lot of steps that you have to go through before you can be approved for surgery, and it should be that way. And this is one of the steps. So yeah, I'm grateful to be here again, and whatever I can offer in terms of my knowledge base, in terms of relationships. I've said before, if people don't come in my office with the idea of talking about relationships, at some point they kind of swing around to it. It's just, and I would say 90 to 95%, whether it be a 17-year-old senior in high school or some 75-year-old retired, professor. They're going to swing back around to it, whether they're single, married, divorced, widowed, etc. It's an issue for pretty much everyone. So
I guess because we live in a world of imperfect people, there's always going to be a need for us to really just check ourselves out too, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the imperfections, really have to start with us. I just actually had a session prior to jumping on this, and this is one of the topic areas that came up, that, it's very easy to point fingers at the other person. That's real easy. Say, I can't believe so-and-so treated me this way. I don't deserve to be treated this way. I never chose to be with a person like this. Why did they end up hurting me in the way that they did for something that's not going well?
Right.
Well, we do choose them. Even if we don't initially choose them, we, at the very least, we choose to stay with them, even when the handwriting's on the wall. And usually for many, people are on their best behavior, right, during the initial stages of dating. Everyone is. It's a bit of a checkers match, depending on how sophisticated you are, a chess match, but everybody's making moves. It's just to name it the game. And I think the operative word is game, because it is a game in the beginning. I hate to think otherwise, but it is. Everyone's on their best behavior. And, depending on how much your BS detector is up to manipulations and the desire to maybe be on another agenda than you are, then it could be really hurtful to the other individual. So at the end of the day, as all my kids say all the time, and it's a popular expression now in popular culture, at the end of the day, we have to take ownership for every choice we make. I tell this, I actually had this conversation with my client. You may not have picked that person, but in some ways you put out the energy for that person to come your way. Wow. And I do believe in that, by the way. It's we sort of get back what we put out, both positive and negative. I believe that goes back to what we were talking about in the last session about really loving ourselves. If we love ourselves, that's an energy we're going to put out there to people. And I think inevitably people are going to respect us more. And yet, when you get that respect coming your way, I think more quality is going to come your way. And that's where people could get into trouble. So yes, we're talking about relationships, but really it's about this one. You start with this, loving yourself, embracing yourself, every aspect. And I think I'm sure you both can attest to this, that when you have that feeling about yourself, it does get transmitted to the outer world. And if we're going to break it down to relationships, it gets transmitted to a potential partner. And that's when we're in good shape. And if we're in the inverse, if we don't love ourselves, if we dislike ourselves, if we doubt ourselves, and look, we all have doubts, but if we doubt ourselves to the nth degree, if we really don't believe in ourselves, people are going to see that as well. And maybe the less good intentioned people, unfortunately, will exploit that. So, and you won't get the respect you deserve, and you'll be hurt. This happens a lot with my clients. It's a cyclical, sort of ongoing phenomenon.
So do you see yourself as the flight attendant saying, put your oxygen mask on first before you go help someone else?
100%. Absolutely. And this is like, an example that I think we need to use in many areas of life, in terms of assisting others, right? Even for myself, I have to put my oxygen mask on first before I can be a helper or a healer, right? If I'm not taking good care of myself, what kind of model am I for the clients I work with? So I try to adopt that philosophy in general, but certainly in terms of dating, and really get in that pure oxygen. It's a metaphor, but it's almost literal. You really need to breathe and get fresh air, put good food in your body, take good care of yourself, especially during the era we live in, most especially. So yes, put on that mask, but make sure it comes with clean, pristine H2O and absorb it. So now you're bringing, a healthy person to the table. So yes, it starts with oxygen. It's obviously it's a metaphor, but it's really about taking good care of yourself and loving yourself.
One question that comes up when you say that, good, clean energy, whenever you say that, I'm thinking of what are people's, you have your relationships with other people, but what about your spiritual relation? If you're not centered, if you're not getting clean energy coming in, do you work with people and their whatever their spiritual beliefs are, or do you have people that say I don't believe in anything? And are they harder to work with if someone doesn't have some sort of a higher power faith to go to?
Yeah. I mean, I try to meet people where they are, Oscar. I think most people believe in something, but I'm willing to be open to whatever people believe in. There's no taboos in my work, however you define yourself. But I don't take spirituality and religion off the table at all. If people decide not to go there, then that's where we go. And if I see that maybe something is resonating for them that maybe goes beyond traditional spiritual beliefs, whether it be a belief in the power of water or the power of nature, to me, that's a spiritual belief as well. But if it goes even beyond that into more traditional spiritual / religious beliefs, I get right in there with people. And I try to be well versed in understanding sort of the precepts behind sort of the fundamental religions, if we're going to get to that. And if I'm not aware, I'll just ask questions of people. What does this mean to you? I'm not afraid to ask questions so that I know, fully how much their belief system affects the way they approach their life. But I happen to believe it's an important component in really understanding your inner world and really understanding the magic of life. And it is magical and mysterious. And that's what's beautiful about the work, that there's no roadmap, right? There's no script. Just like we don't have a script here, things just sort of unfold somewhat magically in my view. So I believe in that. I mean, I don't think there was enough room to put into my tagline, Phil, but if you notice when I put it in there, I call myself a spiritual gangster.
Yes.
And I mean that in the most positive sense of the word, and no disrespect to my colleagues.
I wanted to know what that meant. I wanted to know what that
I'll explain it to you in a second.
I think that hit the
I figured it would get
like,
attention.
I gotta ask Joel what
I
that
figured it would get some attention. I wanted to provoke, some thoughts on this. It's not what you would classically think. There's not a John Dillinger element to my spirituality.
You can take the boy out of the Bronx, but you can't take the Bronx out of
right. Locked and loaded at all time. But no, what I mean, and again, no disrespect to my colleagues, but there are a lot of people that are kind of what we call sort of woo-woo in terms of their spirituality. It's a little bit sort of kind of goes a little bit out there, and God bless. It doesn't necessarily resonate for me, that approach. I think I like to bring it back down to earth, so to speak, even if it may have a heavenly origin. I like to bring it back down to earth. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it stays amongst the stars and it doesn't really speak to people. So when I say spiritual gangster, what I mean is you could be of the spirit and still be, and I mean this really in a mild sense, but I can't think of a better word. And I hope this is not too strong a term, but a spiritual badass, that you could be a badass, but also be of the spirit, meaning that you're nobody's fool. You have at least 1 foot, 1 foot on the ground, but you're aware. You're a person who's aware of reality, but also has the ability to transcend reality. And of course, nobody's fool. Getting back to my example of people that allow themselves to be manipulated, right? So there's the gangster term. Yeah. I don't think you would associate being manipulated with gangsterism, right? It's really gangster, maybe in the truest sense of the word, that I've got this, meaning I've got this, got me, and you're not going to play me. And but if you don't play me and you give yourself fully and in the most authentic way, you're going to get so much back in return. So much back in return. But the inverse, if you try to play, it's not going to go so well.
Right. I'm sorry. Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
Please.
No, but I want to revisit the dating thing, because now dating now is like extremely, it's an online thing, right? Because most people are trying to social distance and all that. But what would be some of the dynamics of dating now that, some of the things to look out for while dating during COVID?
Well, as I mentioned in the previous one, it's less session, it's less online than people would think. I think the initial meetings are coming about online, but people are meeting each other in person because of a real sort of abject sense of loneliness. So it depends on their fears in relationship to COVID, I would say. I think some people are really fearful of physical touch and et cetera, and they may relegate it exclusively to online dating, but really online communications. But really, a lot of my clients are meeting up in person, and as I said in the previous episode, sometimes moving a little too quickly because of their loneliness and needs, primary needs that aren't being met. So it's an interesting dynamic. It can go either way. If it's relegated exclusively to an online relationship, I guess it can only be taken so far. And it remains to be seen what will happen when things open up more and or people feel more comfortable going up. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen after a vaccine comes about or just who knows. It could be. I definitely don't want to get political here, but I'm just going to state it as a projected observation that after the elections, it remains to be seen one way or the other if things are going to open up more, and therefore people are going to be less reluctant to be out there and then get into a quote unquote more normal dating pattern. But it seems to go in either extreme, Phil. People are either relegating themselves exclusively to online communication because of fear of physical contact, fear of venturing outside, or they're moving a little too quickly because their needs are so great. And then they, as I talked in the last episode, they're getting into some trouble for that because they move too fast. And some people's agendas are not authentic, getting back to having that antenna up, right, and having a strong core so that you're able to identify that. If you're not able to identify that, somebody's looking to just sort of take advantage, then a lot of my clients have gotten very hurt during this period, especially if they're prone to falling quickly.
Yeah.
Then they've gotten into some trouble, unfortunately. And then I have to sort of do some cleanup work afterwards. But to me, when that happened,
what does that look like? What would the cleanup work look like?
The cleanup work is that some of it is obviously having to talk people down from the ledge figuratively because they just doubt themselves and, beat themselves up for the choices they make. And I think I have to be a little gentle with folks like this because we are living in an unprecedented times. So you may act in ways that you wouldn't normally act. So I think that, although I can be very direct and tough, quote unquote, tough with people, there's times when you need to just do a little hand holding and let people know that, listen, we're imperfect beings. We usually lead with our hearts and when it comes to, romance and love. So be a little easier on yourself. You made a mistake. And I think the main thing is once we get to that, past that part, is I call it using it grist for the mill. And now that we have this information, now the key is not to repeat it because there's a good chance that you'll come across another situation if you're active in the dating scene, if you're active in the online scene. And now you have an opportunity to hit the reset. So in other words, that's where I'll talk them through of maybe pacing a little bit more, using a little bit of your head to balance out your heart and other aspects of the self so that you're really going at a pace that's more natural. And you could then have more of that sense of self-respect. And then even whatever happens on the other end, you won't be as wounded. So I won't have to then pick up the pieces as much. It'll be more of just a natural phenomenon that may occur in dating in general, which, you know, even at its best can be challenging for sure.
On a good day, it's challenging. So
On a good day, yes,
my
sure.
question is this: you're looking at a patient that has a fear of whatever it is right now. Do you have that patient, once you talk to them off the ledge of that fear, do they come up with a new fear? Is that a pattern with people that if you try to solve one problem, they'll find some people are always looking for that dark cloud around every silver lining?
That's a great question, Oscar. That's a great question. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the people that I work with, I call it being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Their default, just like, you know, the computers that we're on now has a default settings.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people, their default is to the negative, because they carry what I call like a low-grade depression with them. So they're not accustomed to feeling good. They don't even know what it's like to feel good. So, for example, if that dating issue is quote unquote solved, immediately they'll come up with something else that's problematic, because they can't just sit with the sense that, you know, I can objectively look at this and say, this is an opportunity for a reset. This is an opportunity to do some self-examination. This is an exact opportunity to explore yourself a little bit, which can really lead you to wonderful places. But subconscious, it's generally subconscious, Oscar. I don't think people say, I want to be unhappy and I want to be miserable and I want to default to the negative. But it's such a learned pattern that they've probably had since really the day they arrived. It's been a lifelong pattern. They just are not comfortable being comfortable, for lack of a better way of explaining it. So they find almost manufacture ways to create discomfort. And that's the challenge for me, how to tease out what is a real issue and what is a manufactured issue. We call it, in my field, we call it malingering issues.
Okay.
When you're being a malingerer, when you're just sort of manufacturing something because you can't really deal with the fact that you have to really, at the end of the day again, you have to take ownership of your life. When things are going well, now you have to nurture and cultivate it. And that's, you know, guys, that's work, right?
That's it.
It's work.
In our world, we call that dramified.
What do you call it?
I said, in our world, we call that dramified.
Dramified, yeah, for sure. For sure. But there's a lot of that. Yeah. There's a lot of that. And again, the challenge for me is to tease it out, because sometimes it's legit. There's some really, you know, they may have resolved the dating issue, but really something heavy is coming down. Maybe they got laid off during this time. You know, their company downsized. I mean, that's not a manufactured issue. That's a real deal. You gotta support yourself, or you have a family, support your family. That's not a malingering issue. That's not defaulting to anything. That's defaulting to the fact that you don't want to default on your mortgage, for God's sake. That's real stuff. But that I have to tease that out. When is it? You know, sometimes the issue is sort of like teeters on the edge of being a malingering issue and a quote unquote real issue.
Right.
So I see job security. I see job security for you, Joel, because, you know, this is, if it's not one thing, it's another in 2020. I think we got an asteroid heading our way by November 2nd. You know, why not?
I thought it was heading our way right now.
I want a big one.
Job would be so secure, actually. I was going to say thanks for the heads up.
All right. Let me go dig my bunker right now, guys.
Right, thanks for the heads up.
This and go dig a bunker outside.
That's right.
Our next show will be from the bunker.
That's right. That's right.
No, but I was thinking. I was thinking about.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was thinking about couples. Yeah. Now that have been in quarantine, and I mean there were two things I saw in the news. There were two different scenarios going on. You know, you have the couple that, you know, they start wanting to spend more time together, and then you have that couple. Yeah, that couple that is just like, I can't believe I married you.
You're still here?
No, it's like, because now they're having to spend all this time together in a closed space. Yeah. You know, what do you have to say in a scenario like that?
Well, it's difficult for most, I'll be honest. For some people, they may welcome it in terms of the opportunity to bond with their children. especially, quite frankly, fathers that are maybe on the workaholic end and are never home.
Mm.
So if they're forced to work remotely, there's always opportunities to squeeze in some downtime when you're working remotely. So a lot of them welcome that aspect of it in terms of children. In terms of the couples, it's a problem because it's just too much. And especially people that are not accustomed to spending that much time together. It may be less of an issue, for example, for couples that maybe have their own business and are accustomed to being, which I can't imagine, but God bless them. But that are used to being together 24/7. This is not really an anomaly. They're just doing it at home. I mean, they might have done it previously. People have had home-based businesses, but a lot of people have had like brick and mortar businesses or things of that sort where they've worked together. Less of an issue. It's predominantly most people don't fit into that category, so they're getting on each other's nerves. There's no doubt about it, and there's not a heck of a lot I could do. Is just sort of come up with strategies for them that will work. And for the most part, it seems to be about really carving out space for yourself. If people have the physical space, so oftentimes both partners are working. It's just the society we live in. This is the USA. So it's like you definitely need the two incomes generally. So we work it out if they have the physical space to kind of like work in separate areas. So that when you're on work time, you really have to treat it like that. You don't just come up with, honey, get me lunch, or can you get me a drink? No. You're working. You're working, and she's working.
Right.
So you have to respect that time. So if there's that sense of mutuality, and those conversations have to be had before the workday starts. And they have to be had before you're ripping your hair out at night because the kids are getting on your nerve. It's not all, butterflies and rainbows, because it usually is too intense. Even though I glorify one aspect of it with fathers, in general, it's just way too intense. So you don't want to have these discussions when the tension level is high. But maybe when the kids are asleep and it's quiet, you sit down over dinner and you just say, let's come up with a game plan that works for both of us. Again, a lot of it's dependent on physical space. If you don't have the physical space to separate while you're working, that's more problematic. It's almost being like in two cubicles, I would say, at an office environment. And if you're not used to working that way, that's a challenge. People that work in cubicles, even then there's a sense of a barrier. And I even encourage them to try to create some sense of separation if they have to be in the same room. But that's very challenging because people are doing this at the same time. You can't, if you're hearing the other person's voice, it's taking you off your game. So it's a challenge for sure. And, there's no magic formula to solve it, but people have to navigate it, on their own and come up with the way that works for best for them. But if I had to give you a generalization, it is increasing tension level between couples.
Yeah, I could see that because
it definitely is.
Normally, the normal workday is you get up, you get in the car or you get on the train, you go to work, you see your work family, and then you get back in the car, back in the train, and you transition back to family person.
Yes.
And now that's gone. So there is no, transition time where you can just leave work aside and, be a family person. Yeah. So what's your objective with a couple that has never worked? Like you said, if I knew people that were business owners and they were around 24 hours a day and, they that was their normal. But now no one has their personal space anymore. No one has their personal time anymore. How do you diffuse that, that head to head, everyone wanting their space, but there isn't any?
That's a great point. I think that what I generally work with around this issue is I try to help cultivate if they don't already have this. And again, it depends on people's comfort level. That's why this is so tricky. Depends on their comfort level in terms of leaving the home and where they're located, right, within the US. Because depending on how rampant COVID is and how much it's tamed or whatever, that also affects how comfortable they may be in terms of physical movement. But if people already have it in place to some extent, I encourage them to spend time separately from each other. So when they're not working, I have as a gentleman I work with that happens to love golf. You can golf in Westchester County. The courses are open. He doesn't do it every day, but he does it, I'd say, once a week. You know, he does 18 holes, 2, 3 hours, whatever. He gets some sunshine, which I'm a big believer, and I talked about in the last segment. I think it's very important. Getting back to self-care, he's able to shoot the breeze with his buddies, and he comes back a better person. He needs that. That's his therapy in addition to the therapy with me.
Well, that's where
one could argue more important.
If you look at the word recreation, it's 2 words. It's recreate.
Oh, that's great.
So
Yeah.
You have to. I'm not that bright. I just copied this from people I've heard before. I'll take the credit.
We know that, but you're a good copier. We like that.
No, I have to be smart. I just have to remember what other people say.
Yeah, I wish I could remember half the time what I said. But yeah, and the inverse as well. You want the partner should have, if they're comfortable with it, say their own hobby. Let's say they like to golf, or they like to go out for a meal with a friend, just to have an hour or two to themselves, or a bunch of friends, and just unwind, recreate, so to speak. And then come back hopefully renewed. And I found that it helps. It's not a cure-all. It's not a panacea, because eventually you still have to come back to the reality. You can't do this 22 hours a day, but it gives you a respite. Yeah, it'd be nice, right?
I'll be back Tuesday, hon.
Right. But it gives you a respite. And I think that respite only helps.
How would somebody identify if they start struggling with, like, for instance, for those who are not working, right? The family that has either the husband or the wife not working, or both people not working, right?
Right.
And they are starting to, you have to identify when you start going into this like low depressive state of I don't have, how am I going to do this? That kind of thing. It can put a pressure on the relationship as well. How do you advise a couple that's kind of like trying to dig through that?
It's more challenging when they're both not working, but there's usually one partner that's a little bit more reality based than the other, so to speak. So usually one of the partners will realize, my friend, my lover, you're going down the rabbit hole, because you know the person. You're starting to go down that rabbit hole. And this is not good for you. This is not good for us. And quite frankly, that's what has led some people to come to me. And quite frankly, it's been the men that has come to me. It's generally the case anyway. They're oftentimes, if they're married, oftentimes referred by their spouses. But it has to be noticed by the person who's more of an observer and more of a reality check. I said, if they're both out of work and they're both going down the rabbit hole, that's tough. Then usually you have to have a family member observe it. Mom is going to
an intervention, an outside observer.
Someone close to them, someone who loves them. And usually you're going to turn to your mother if you have one, or your sibling when two of you are out of work and you're freaking out about funds. You're going to reach out to loved ones. Right. So somebody's going to notice it outside the home, usually.
I mean, wouldn't that result sometimes in like fault finding? Well, it's your fault that, and then, well, no, it's your fault that this is, somebody. So you try to,
sure, or blaming. You're not looking hard enough to find a job. Don't blame it on COVID.
Right.
You want to figure it out. Start something up online. Phil.
Listen, we are
online business, right? I mean, as an example, right?
That's what I'm doing.
Right.
But when people see this, they'll say to their spouses, "Why can't you do that?" And it doesn't necessarily reduce the tension. I could assure you.
But that's so true. I think more like you start developing like false expectations, right? Like expectations that are unrealistic. You tell them,
depending. They may be false, but quite frankly, some people are lazy. and they use COVID as an excuse not to go walls to the wall. I'm trying to be clean. Phil. I know you're a pastor, and I have a potty mouth. That's who I am, but I'm really trying to. I'm proud of myself because I don't think I threw one out yet. I've tried to really clean them up, but
well, you haven't seen us offline. He curses at me all the time. But he's right.
Well, so if you give me free reign, don't give me free reign because this the FCC might get involved in this. But I tend to speak freely in general with my clients as well. But I'm trying to be respectful. I'm in front of two respectable gentlemen here, so I have to.
When did they get in the room? Hold on.
Whoa. Oscar, I think he's talking to you, man.
He better not be. I got a reputation, you know.
That's right. You have a reputation of hold. Again, my apologies. But
how do you? Can you? And I don't know how to phrase it correctly. Can you give people a sense of if you see this coming? You know, because right now everybody's getting hit from all sorts of different directions.
Sure.
So before they start the blame stacking to the point where one little thing triggers, you know, a blowout that normally wouldn't.
Right.
How do you tell people to take a step back off the stage, get on the balcony, you know, observe what's happening, and just like diffuse the situation? Because as you said, everyone is living together at the house 24/7. The things that used to piss you off and you forgot about it on the way to work and came back, that's off the table. So now, how do you diffuse people's, you know, what I say, stacking of you know, you left the toilet seat up again, you know, and whatever it is that now all of a sudden is you know, ready for divorce papers.
Coming to an end.
So how do you?
Well, no, I said the world is coming to an end because the toilet seat's up.
Right. Yeah, well, so we know we know how much it is about the toilet seat. But listen, it's not hard for me to tell people this, Oscar. The question is, the challenge is to foster receptivity to what I'm telling, and that I think is the art, quite frankly, in my work, how to present it so that it lands well, so that they see it. Listen, we're not living in normal times, right? There's no way of getting around it. Nobody asked to be in this situation if they're in that situation with each other 24/7. How could you be completely on top of your game? It's impossible. So each partner has to give each other a pass. There's no doubt about it. And to give, and I like for people to give specific examples and going beyond the toothpaste and the toilet seat, but really those things that are festering. Because now this isn't, you know, if you asked me this 4.5 months ago, 5 months ago, my answer would have been much different than today. Who would have predicted that we're 5.5, 6 months into this now, still going weak, as it were, still going weak. And it's a challenge. So I don't want to insult people's intelligence by just saying, well, here's the recipe, just, you know, this and that, get over it. I have to acknowledge that there's going to be a certain level of tension. And that in and of itself, Oscar, can be diffusing, to recognize that you're not crazy, that everybody's going through this. It has to end at some point. I mean, this can't go on forever. It's impossible. So the problem is with people, there isn't a beginning, middle, and end to this. You know, if people know that, let's say somebody's away for military duty or for other reasons on a business project overseas, and they're scheduled to be away for 6 months. I mean, they may deviate depending on how the project goes, maybe a few days here, a few days there, a week here, a week there, but you generally know when that partner is coming back. There's a beginning to this, but nobody can predict the end. That unknown, that uncertainty is driving people a bit mad. And especially when you add that component of being on top of each other and the fact that maybe their relationship wasn't that strong to begin with. Even people whose relationships were strong are struggling. But imagine if it wasn't strong to begin with, and you were sort of teetering on the edge and sort of getting by because maybe subconsciously or consciously, you both became workaholics because you wanted to be two ships passing in the night. because you really want to spend time with each other. So now you're forced to.
Wow.
You're already teetering on the edge. I'm not trying to go from a 10 to a 1 in terms of tension. If I can get them below the 5 zone, then I think I've been pretty successful. If I get them into a 4, because sometimes it's an 11. Remember Spinal Tap, right? Spinal
Yeah.
Tap, you get the volume to 11, it's past 10. Get them to a 4, great. Everything after that's gravy. And it takes a little time to get to a 4. It's
And
baby steps. Go to a 9 1 week, maybe 7 2 weeks, 6 another week, maybe go up to a 7 the next week, go back down to, it's a little bit of 2 steps forward, 1 back, 1 step forward, 2 back. But eventually, I think if people are committed to the relationship, committed to the marriage, committed to themselves, and they do the work, they generally show improvement. But this is no miracle. These are challenging times that we live in. And that has to be acknowledged, not to gloss over it. It doesn't do anybody any good.
and this is why and what everything that Phil's been doing, what I'm seeing is there are professionals that handle situations. This is not something you want to say, I got a problem, my wife will figure it out, because you're in the middle of it. So you don't have an objective view.
Right.
So, when Phil had on the accountant, it made it really clear. You need an accountant. You can't just use QuickBooks and solve everything. So you need a Joel to come in and say, all right, let's see what you guys are saying. And this is what's actually happening, because you're coming from years of experience, training and everything else, and been there, done that. You've seen that already. Right. So like you said before, no one predicted this. No one says, all right, now you're going to be in the house 24/7 with each other.
Mm-hmm.
For 6 months and going and counting.
But what I realized though too, Joel, is that pressure like this brings out insecurities. Like some people have worked hard to never go, to make sure they never go want for anything, but now you're 6 months in, the savings are dwindling down, things are, and your insecurity of, am I going to go broke? Am I going to go homeless? Am I going to be like my dad? Am I going to be like my mom?
Do I have to go move back in with dad and mom?
Am I going to move back in with dad and mom?
Some had to.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like that in itself are things that you may need to talk to somebody about.
For sure.
Because you don't want to get so deep into that rabbit hole where, you can't see your way out.
Yeah, it's a great point, because I think people really, when situations like that arise, and the fears are legitimate.
Yeah.
Those fears can't be eradicated by words. That's reality. That's getting back to, how I approach spirituality, the reality aspect of it. You can't sage that away. I don't mean this disrespectfully to anyone who practices that, but you can't. And when you're, for example, put in a position where some of it is logistical, I'll be honest, some of them maybe go to their parents that say are in Florida or in other climate, even though Florida's got its issues, but at one point it didn't as much. So that was sort of a go-to for some people to be in a warmer climate where things weren't as heated as it was here in New York. So people would make moves like that thinking that it was safer. Right. That's one thing. Then you could sort of justify that it's a safety issue. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for my spouse. When it comes to a purely financial thing, not now that's where the quote unquote rubber hits the road, as they say. Now you can go back to age 7, 8, 9, 10 in your mind. I'm a little kid again. And now I'm forced to have to live with mommy and daddy. And you could justify and say it's Corona and I got downsized and this. Doesn't matter. Inside you feel not good. Yeah. And when you rest that way, you feel like a child again. If you haven't been in that home for 20 years, 30 years or whatever, or except for maybe a visit during the holidays.
What's funny, it's funny you brought that up. I just finished a book called Atomic Habits. And what they said there is Um, One of the problems they had in Vietnam is the guys using heroin. And they thought, that's it, you're a heroin addict, you're going to be a heroin addict your whole life. And then you come back and all of a sudden you're not a heroin addict because you've changed your whole environment. And the opposite is true when you go to a rehab center and now you're clean and you get back to the situation you were before. Now you start using again. So going back to mom and dad's house, you're back, like you said, to being a 7-year-old. And how do you justify that in your head being 40, 50 years old with a 7-year-old environment? You know,
It's hard. It's very hard, and that's probably one of the bigger challenges, because there's nothing that can be done to assuage that feeling, except again setting the bar low in situations like this. I mean, I'll set the bar high in situations where I feel people could, as the expression goes, their reach can exceed their grasp based on the situation. You got to set the bar real low with this. If you're in a situation like this, you're gonna feel bad, and the mere acknowledgement of that again can be reassuring to people, and to let them know they're not alone, because I know that other people have been put in this position. That's reassuring. But if it goes from like them not kicking and screaming, in this case they're adults and they're having the inevitable fights with their parents and their spouses. If the tension level goes down with their parents and they at least get up to from 7 to 17 developmentally, or 27, then I feel like I'm doing my job. They're acting at least like an adult towards them, and not going back to age 7 where they're just acting like a brat because mommy's getting in my space, or daddy. Well, it's their space. It's not your space anymore.
Exactly.
You're not, but you inevitably you're going to regress because it's not something you could ever have envisioned. Because for most people, or many people, 8, 17, 18, you're out. You're gone. It was for me, 18, and I didn't look back. I can't even imagine, my parents, rest in peace, but I can't even imagine having to be put in a position like that as an adult. So we have to acknowledge the difficulty of it. And also, just if there's any kind of, seeds of hope that I could plant, there is going to be some endpoint to this. It can't go on forever. But the problem is we can't specify it as it would be with an overseas trip or a military, stint, which generally has a defined period to it. Always can be extended.
Now, this is good. I just thought of this this kind of a really hot subject.
That's scary. You just thought of it. I might have to back up.
How would you recommend someone that's, because our political climate is so intense right now. I mean, it is. You haven't noticed? Yeah. No. Exactly.
I've been too busy, deconstructing people's psyches.
No, but think about it. It's like, why? What would happen? How does somebody handle this like political anxiety? And then you can't have it's almost like you can't have a conversation with your family because that starts a whole it's so intense that it's like penetrating.
It's Thanksgiving night all over again.
Yeah, it's like you start all you have to say is which side you're on, and you have a whole nuclear war at home.
Oh my God, Phil, I'm so glad you thought of that question. It's such a softball. Thank you so much. You just came up with it. It was just a basic,
It's like, hey, why not?
I could answer that in 10 seconds. That's a softball. I thought you were going to hit me with something hard. Oh my God, that's the most difficult, I think, of anything. It's easy if you're aligned politically, obviously. Then now your partner's in crime. That's not difficult. But if you're not aligned politically, I mean, I didn't learn this in graduate school. I learned it from my grandmother. When it comes to politics and religion, be very selective about who you talk to, even with your spouse, especially if you're not aligned. This is not a time to get too much involved. So what do you do? I mean, it's going to come up, but I may give the suggestion, you know what? You may not want to tune into either convention right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They both, one is passed, another is in the process. You might not want to tune into it. It might. Don't watch it together, for God's sake. If you're not aligned. I mean, again, I didn't need graduate school for that.
Yeah,
I
don't get in the bedroom and turn turn the TV on,
Can you
laying in the
imagine?
bed.
You're polar opposites of this. I mean,
unless you already
if it's
have
just a pillow, like it flies. That's a
unless
thing.
you already have the divorce decree papers in front of you, so you just fill in the blanks as the day progresses.
Yeah, you definitely want to try to mitigate it, but again, knowing that it's inevitably going to come up because it's a climate we live in. We're weeks away from the election, but again, just try to. If I want to impart that, I'm not trying to act like I'm some sort of magician that can make all this stuff go away, but I'm just being honest with people. If I could help mitigate the tensions by just giving some fundamental kind of common sense techniques that I could do as an observer with issues that are so loaded. For people who promise the sky with stuff like that, I'd be a little weary. That's where the spiritual gangster part of me would be like, really? It's going to be all, it's going to be just fine. No, it's not going to be just fine, but it could be better.
Right.
Some things can be just fine. Some things can be just fine. If you're feeling good and positive and you're getting out of the house a little bit and you're sharing a meal, if you're comfortable going outside and you're unwinding and letting your hair down a little bit. I'm sorry, Phil, apologize for the metaphor. If you're letting your hair down a little bit.
Thanks, bro. Really appreciate that.
It's a metaphor, my friend. Listen.
I let my hair down all the time.
Down the drain.
You got it easy, bro. You don't even have to do anything in the morning. You saw me before we got on there, right?
Yeah. But that's great though. That's great to know that just talking about it though, I think sometimes helps.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's just a matter of, my feeling is, my personal thing with my wife is we don't have to live with them. So, it's like,
with the politicians.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to live with them. So things are going to happen and you have no control over the universe, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you have no control over the universe.
That's a very good thing, Phil. It's that, and if I would taking it to another level, going beyond strategies. I mean, I use this as a general rule, but especially in a situation like this, you really have to follow this golden rule, which is focus on what you can control, let go of what you can't, because if you can't control this. And the thing is, we can't control so much of what's going on right now. That's why this is so challenging for people. But this is a time, if you're grounded, getting back, I think it was your first question, Oscar. If you have that spiritual anchoring, if you have that core, even however one defines it, if you have that core that's solid, then you can adopt that philosophy of focusing on what I can control, letting go of what I can't. Nobody can stop you from being loving. I don't care who the president is, right? Nobody can stop you from being a good spouse, a good friend, a good coworker, a good colleague, a respectable human being. Nobody can take that away from you. The book's been written about people feeling the most free while they were in prison, right? Many books from people, because they were liberated from themselves in a sense, because they had the opportunity to do some deep reflection. So they came out stronger people. I'm talking about especially political prisoners.
Nelson Mandela,
Nelson Mandela is a perfect example of that.
His
perfect
being
example.
bitter.
There was a book by Bruno Bedelheim, who was a Holocaust survivor. He was in a concentration camp, but he also had the ability to sort of be a participant in the most horrific circumstances, but also be an observer. He was a psychiatrist, and he wrote about his experiences afterwards, Elie Wiesel. But Mandela and people like that stand out. The ability to be a participant and an observer at the same time. And then be a light onto people after that, to utilize your experiences to really enrich other people's lives, which is the greatest gift I think you can do.
That's one of the things that I've learned and am learning, is to catch yourself and get off the stage of the drama and sit in the balcony and be an observer, so you can diffuse the situation, because when you're on, like they say, you're on the stage, you're in the play. You can't see what the other person's doing. You're reading your lines over and over. And to be on the stage, to be that a little bit off of the drama
Yeah,
is
for sure.
huge. And I'm
You
learning
have to
that
step away.
and trying to apply it more and more, every day now,
That's
because it's like,
great.
yeah, I'm in the middle
That's
of this,
great.
but I can, and without going too woo woo, when we say, yeah, I'm going to change my mind, or you're basically still observing yourself. There's like another person watching what you're doing. So take advantage of that and be that person on the balcony as often as possible.
No, I think it's great, and those, that's what I mean by the moments of respite that we have to sort of grab. And sometimes people don't have the luxury to do it in 2 or 3 hour chunks, but again, you can do it in 15, 20-minute chunks, 10-minute chunks, but you can go on the balcony for those 10 minutes and take full advantage of it. And trust me, I hear this most especially from single mothers, right? Because they don't have 2 or 3 hours to go on the balcony. They may get 2 or 3 minutes.
Fun. Yeah.
But they have to take advantage of those 2 or 3 minutes. And imagine if that's all you had during the course of a day because of, the situation that's going on now, and the uncertainty about school and whether it's going to be in person or remote. Do I have to stay at home? Can I work remotely? There have been some of my clients, some people I know personally that are single moms that have had to be with their kids 24/7.
Yes.
And they don't have any help. And they may not have supportive family members or family members that live close by. They might have 13 minutes. And they have it at say 9:18 p.m. when the kids are asleep. They want to unwind and they're crashing by 9:25 because they're so tired. So I guess they're getting sleep, but they're not,
They're
it's
not
not an
resting.
opportunity to really get that real respite. And I feel for people like this. I think they're in the most difficult of circumstances, quite frankly.
I think
Wow.
the best example I can remember of being on the balcony. I probably told you this before, Phil. I was on the way to work on a Westchester bus, and it was raining, and this woman came on, and I call her the old church lady. Everything about her says I'm a church lady. Had an umbrella under her arm, and it was leaking on some kid's foot that had his legs out, onto the walkway. And he starts, just going up and down and cursing at her and everything. And she, from the balcony, turned around and said, "It's too early for you, Satan. I know that's you." And she walked away. And I'm like, and the guy's looking at me. I'm like, dude, you have no reply to that. And, literally, because she could have gone back and forth on the stage with this kid because, yeah, her umbrella is leaking on him, but your feet are out in the middle of the walkway. So, but she took herself off the stage and just said, "It's too early for you, Satan. I know that's you," and walked away. It was just the most fantastic diffusing of a bad situation. So if you can get to that level of mastery of
Right.
getting on the stage like this.
Well, and that doesn't come from graduate school, my friend.
No,
that comes from that's an inclination that you're born with.
Joel, before we get going, because we are definitely running out of time. Sure. Tell the folks just how they can reach out to you, the different ways. I know the banner is up, but just reiterate what they're looking at.
What's on the banner, Phil? I'm sorry.
Your email is on the banner.
Okay, so they can reach me directly at 917-843-4399. My email is info@jarotherapyny.com. Basically the same as my. My website is jarotherapyny.com. It's been a long day. jarotherapyny.com. I got rolling pretty early today. As I said in the previous segment, if people have any questions about this in particular, anything that came up that resonates or doesn't resonate, or something was clear or unclear, feel free to give me a call about this. And again, if they're interested in my services, I'd be more than happy to talk to people. I give people a complimentary phone session. for at least 20 minutes so we can get into, you know, some of the stuff that's going on, and you don't have to worry about payments at all. And if you find that I speak to you and we relate well, then we can work together. And you find not, then I'll find you the appropriate person as well. But it's definitely a complimentary phone session. And you know, it's again, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to do this. This was once again fun. I think it was a different tone today, but I think that's the beauty in all this, right? You never know which way it's going to swing, you know. But it was a wonderful experience, and I love having conversations with you guys. It's just it's so beautiful that we don't have a script, but it just kind of
flows.
Just flows effortlessly. That I really enjoy these kind of experiences. So I want to thank you guys a lot. Thank you, Phil, for again inviting me.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on, man. You're what we love about you is that how passionate you are about what you do. And that's important because that means you care about your clients. You care about the people who are in front of you. And that is not easy to find. You know,
well, I
some
appreciate
people,
that.
yes, some people are just, you know, you can tell where there's some people in their profession and, you know, money is the primary thing, you know, if no money is no, that's it, you know. But you know, when you really care about what you do, you know, you're sensitive to it. It's a business, of course. We all have
and
to pay our
listen,
bills.
the money's going to come if you're good at what you do. But like in any profession, if you focus on that exclusively, you're missing the prize. And especially in the human services, I was just speaking to a friend of mine who's a teacher the other day. I mean, we're privileged to be in the human services. I mean, I probably have had the experience and the privilege to have, at this point, thousands of people that have let me in their lives. You know what kind of privilege that is?
Yeah.
And teachers, the ability to mold people's lives, right? And there's a lot of controversy right now about teaching and whether people should go in or do it remotely. But those opportunities, if you're able to step on the balcony, and observe, because it's not all fun and games. Sometimes some days are really difficult and draining and whatever, you know, it's just the way it is. It's not easy work. But when you take a step back from it, realize what a privilege is. Who could say they've met thousands of people intimately?
That's it.
If you're good at what you do, and you know, the business is going to flourish. You don't have to push it too hard.
Yeah.
You just have to believe in yourself. And that's what I try to impart upon my clients. Believe in yourself. The rest sort of follows organically oftentimes. Even with all the advertising and all, you know, at the end of the day, is provide excellent service.
Yeah.
Not good service, excellent. And have it come from the heart, the soul, the mind. Give it your all. No excuses. You got to be on all the time, right? I started my day at 7:30 today. I hope I was on for you guys. I did the best I could. I know it took a different tone.
Absolutely, man.
But it was a different tone. But you know, you have obligations you have to fulfill, and hopefully that can be a model for my clients to take yourself seriously, love yourself, take your work seriously, take your relationship seriously, have fun. Obviously, in the process, we had fun. We joked around a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you could have fun doing it, but you really have to, like, if you're privileged enough to be passionate about what you do, and if you're privileged enough to be in a passionate relationship, I think, you know, you pretty much have it all.
Wow. So folks, I want you to be aware that Joel will be back on Thursday. We're doing a summit on Thursday. So we're going to have Jacqueline and Frank, and all of us are just going to have a great discussion and pull everything that we've been talking about together. That's going to be from 12 to 1 on Thursday. You don't want to miss it. Now, if you want to ask your questions, you can post it on Facebook. You can post it on YouTube. And don't forget that we have a $100 gift for 5 people that register to watch the program. So go ahead and register to watch, because there is a drawing at the end of the month, and your name could be in that drawing. And this is only good until the end of the month. So you want to do that. If you reserve Joel's services, $50 for reserving the services of Joel or Oscar or anyone that's within the network. This offer is again only good until the end of this month. So you really don't want to miss it. You want to go register at phoenixnationalbusinessgroup.com and watch it in our theater. And you're asking me, how do I know? How are you going to know if I watch it? Don't worry about that. Just you watch the programs, and if you do retain their services, you will get your gift of $50 as well. So exciting things going on here at Phoenix National Business Group. You just heard Joel Jaro. He gave us some amazing advice, and you really, if you are in need of, just to talk to someone, get that information out, your personal information, you just want to talk to somebody, give him a call so that you can get and retain his services. Joel, it was a pleasure, man. Pleasure having you on.
Thanks again, guys. Really.
Oscar, you're awesome, man. You're awesome.
You are, Oscar.
Well, look, I've been doing this for 3 weeks now, Phil. So I'm getting better at this.
Yeah,
it's definitely shown.
Awesome. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again on Thursday.